Hey everyone, and welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report. My name is Greg Wyshynski of the Connection Newspapers, BJ Cooper rules the Connection Newspapers, and Paul Frumwell of the Connection Newspapers here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Hope everybody has the Scotty Reynolds interview committed to memory. I understand it's been on a few times in the last few weeks. Glad to be back talking some high school playoff action, soccer, lacrosse, tennis, baseball, lots of stuff, and also a debate about football you will not want to miss later in the show. But first, before we get cracking with the high school sports stuff, let's thank the folks that make this show possible every single week. We're talking about the underwriters. CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And hey, Glow Pucks and 10-cent beer, the 101 worst ideas in sports history by me, available wherever books are sold. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
All right, boys, let's get cracking with some news and notes. There's a lot going on. We have to get right to it. And first, let's talk about a big change in the administration here in the northern region for one high school. Tim O'Reilly goes from being the football coach at Jefferson to being the director of student activities at West Springfield. And Tim's a good guy. We all know him. Good coach. Takes over for Mike Dobson over at the Spartans. What's your take on it?
Mike Dobson's going to be hard to replace over there. I mean, he has done they were just talking about Mike Dobson 2 meetings ago at the Northern Region Council meeting, and he had been nominated for a Virginia High School League-sponsored award, which I believe he did get all the votes to get as an administrator. So he was honored in that respect by his peers, and that just speaks volumes to what he's been able to do in that role over there. I mean, you know, he's been there for quite a while, and got a chance to talk to him after the last Northern Region Council meeting, and he was just reminiscing about some of the athletes that have gone through that school and throughout the region. He's a big track guy, and that's kind of the sport around here that doesn't get a whole lot of love, and you know, he's just kind of really helped shepherd where the regional track meet has gone in state track. And I think you know, they were joking around with Tim O'Reilly at the meeting, hoping that he would be the guy to fill the role of track guy, because it takes a lot of hard work. And you know, Mike has definitely left some big shoes to be filled, and I think Tim's very capable of doing that.
And I've definitely seen Tim out those track meets before. I mean, I think the Jefferson folks sometimes do a good job on the technical side of things. Definitely is going to be weird, though. I mean, A.K. Johnson over at T.C. Williams and Mike Dobson, first at Jefferson and then at West Springfield. Both of those guys, like you said, are the ones who facilitated all of those track meets, it seems like, so it's a big changing of the guard. My thing about Mike Dobson at West Springfield, you know, he came to that school after a lot of duress. I mean, a lot of things about recruiting and things of that nature, and he kind of came there as sort of the new new sheriff in town.
Right.
And I think he did a heck of a job. I think he did a really good job running that school from an activity standpoint. And I'll be very interested to see how O'Reilly kind of follows that up. Obviously, there's been sort of this tradition of folks using Jefferson as a jumping-off point. Dobson did, Mike McGurk did, and now O'Reilly does. So, you know, that's a pretty good pedigree right there, folks that have made the jump from Jefferson to another school in the student activities position.
And yet we have another football coach moving into a role of athletic director. It's something we've talked about on this show, and you know, I think that it speaks volumes to what it takes to be a football coach, the managerial aspects that it takes, and usually a football coach is usually also tabbed as an assistant athletic director in whatever format. So usually they're pretty well versed as to what they're getting into. Tim O'Reilly, you know, I'm used to seeing him on the football field as a big burly coach, upset, mean, always mad after a win or a loss. And I saw him at that meeting at the Northern Region Council, and just he was all smiles. So. You know, I think it's a good move for both schools and both people involved, and we have to thank Mike Dobson for everything he's done for all the kids in the area and whatnot. So,
want to mention also Adam Calderon, former baseball player with the West Springfield Spartans, talking about the Spartans, drafted in the 23rd round of the 2006 Major League Baseball first-year player draft by the Toronto Blue Jays. So another local product gets drafted. Don't know quite where he's going to be headed yet, as far as minor leagues, rookie team, that kind of thing. But there you go. Every year there seems to be somebody from the area that gets drafted, so it's a pretty good legacy.
Last year it was Brandon Snyder from Westfield. He went 13th, I believe, overall in the draft. Former Westfield star. I believe he is in the minor league system now. The numbers aren't quite where you'd think they'd be for Snyder, who did well coming out of high school, and everybody, a big prodigy, signed a big contract and whatnot. Big contract for minor league. I mean, it's a lot of money for the minor league. So, it's a crapshoot. And anything, I was telling Paul in the office, anybody top 30 rounds, that's pretty impressive.
Well, the whole baseball draft is a crapshoot. I mean, you remember Brian Taylor from the Yankees. This kid was supposed to come up and become the next great phenom pitcher. Blew out his arm, and then that's it. I mean, I think if you look, I think you'd agree with this, Paul. Out of all the drafts, the baseball draft is the crapshoot. Everybody else, football, hockey, basketball, if you draft them in the first few rounds, they're probably going to see at least the AAA level. At least the practice squad, at least the developmental team in the NBA. But in baseball, it just seems like it's completely a crapshoot. And there's no rhyme or reason for why a guy who is highly touted doesn't make it, or lowly touted does make it.
Well, it's something with baseball is it's so hard to break into baseball, and you just cannot tell if this high school star is going to make it. It takes 4 to 5 years to actually see some results from this player. That's why no one really cares with the baseball draft, because you just don't know. It's a game of chance.
Yeah.
And you see, and even Snyder can definitely turn it. He has plenty of time to turn it around. I mean, we don't even know if
Orioles fan.
Let's preface this by saying you've got a vested interest in him turning it around. You're an Orioles fan.
That's true.
Yeah.
But you can't. He's got years left. Right. I mean, before he actually sniffs the Orioles. So let's give it some time.
Yeah.
And I mean, his performance now means just as much as his performance at Westfield. You just don't know.
Right. And you bring up Snyder. Actually, it's an interesting juxtaposition with Calderon. I mean, Calderon was not a guy coming out of high school that was really highly sought by scouts and people like that. He goes to college, has a good career there, and then all of a sudden becomes a prospect in the MLB draft. So there's a number of different ways you can do it. Calderon went one way, obviously Snyder went another way, but the fact of the matter is both were drafted, and congratulations to both of them.
And I think Calderon was coming from a Division II college out of Florida. And I think Mirza, a reporter at The Connection with us, was doing a story on him this week and got a chance to talk to some people down there. And I think it was a matter of that team making a big splash. 5 guys got drafted off that team. So you wonder, was it a team making a splash? Was it a George Mason, Tony Skinn getting a workout with the Wizards last night sort of splash? Or is it, is it a team willing to take a risk on somebody like Paul mentioned? Like it is a crapshoot. So you wonder where these kids are going to turn out. And like you said, Greg, it's why nobody watches the draft.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean anything at this point.
I think with Calderon, it was a team trying to make themselves better. I think with Skinn, it was charity for a local team.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Really, I think that the important thing is how hard is he going to work.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's all there is to it. If he's going to work hard, things will turn out.
Right, and that was another thing. I mean, he used the fact that he wasn't one of these guys that was highly recruited off the high school team as a motivating factor. It's a good lesson. We got a lot of people out there, watch the show, high school athletes, don't get the kind of sniff that, say, their teammate does. Well, use that. Use that as a reason to go to college, bust your tail, get better, play aggressive, and try to make something out of nothing,
Absolutely. And speaking of baseball and busting your tail and making something out of yourself, just a quick sidebar here on Mr. Jimmy Saris. I did get a chance to talk with Jimmy Saris this week. Jimmy Saris was a former Langley pitching ace who had a 6-0 record, 1.14 ERA, 55.5 innings pitched or whatnot in his senior year. First team All-Region, second team All-State, and signed with Duke University and was a 90-mile-per-hour throwing kind of guy. They were very excited to have him. He was excited to be there. ACC ball in the South is where he wanted to be. And Jimmy did not fare very well at Duke, but it had nothing to do with baseball. Through talking to him and through his account, he showed up his pitching coach during a game. He wanted to throw a curveball. Pitching coach calls a strike, calls a fastball. And the kid from Florida State, it takes it over the fence for a 3-run bomb. Saris makes a motion with his wrist that he wanted to throw a curveball.
Yeah.
Showed up his coach
Yeah.
on the field, and he's off the team after that. So the good news out of it is that he is back home. He's local. He's going to Georgetown for an unspecified amount of scholarship money. And so the Langley kid comes home, and he'll see if he can't get a second opportunity. It was good to talk to him and see that he has learned from the experience. He was portrayed as kind of a bad apple, and I think that the Georgetown folks are just happy to have him, and they say that they've done the research on him to say that he is a character guy. So we'll see how it plays out. He's getting a second chance, and that's more than some people get.
Absolutely. So. And, of course, the other good news is that he didn't go to Duke for lacrosse.
Oh,
so, or else it could have been what?
Gracious.
You don't want to open up that can of worms again?
No.
Fair enough. Speaking of lacrosse, hey, I just made a segue.
Beautiful.
Speaking of lacrosse, we want to get to some state reports. We'll begin with lacrosse. We didn't get really an opportunity to talk about the Oakton girls, Robinson boys, and what happened at the state level for those two teams.
Well, the Oakton girls, it was a doubleheader, Oakton versus Robinson. It was at Westfield High School, and it was the first sanctioned
official
AAA state tournament ever in the history of Virginia.
Now let me stop you right there. I'll tell you who's pissed if I'm this team. Albemarle.
Right.
Albemarle has been in this lacrosse championship for at least 70 years.
Right.
And the one season where it counts, no Albemarle team, Western, Eastern, Northern, Southern, gets in the finals.
Well, I got to give you a quick sidebar then, because Albemarle was not in the tournament because of disciplinary reasons,
right.
and it had nothing to do with their on-the-field positives that they usually do. It was an off-the-field negative, and they had some disciplinary problems, and nothing I've been able to confirm or do my own reporting on, so Google it if you will, but I don't want it to go out there on there. But yeah, I mean, Albemarle is a team that has contended with the Oaktons in every state championship in the last couple of years. Woodson girls blew them out last year. Ashley McCulloch went to town on the Albemarle girls, and the Oakton boys took Albemarle to town, and that's usually the matchup.
It's good to see, in this first official one, that it was an all-Northern region thing. The Albemarle thing aside.
Right.
The fact that lacrosse has gotten to the point up here where it's just yet another sport that we can dominate in makes me smile. Doesn't it make you smile? Doesn't it make you happy?
In the state tournament, it's the same as the Concord District Finals.
Yeah.
So it says something. The Concord District Finals are the same matchups as the state tournament.
Well,
so
it speaks to how hard those guys have to play during the regular season to get where they're going, and in the district tournament too. I mean, it was impressive. But so the Oakton girls, let's start with them. Let's talk about them.
Oakton girls in our play against the Robinson girls, and Katie Burkle had an incredible day, and she had 2 goals and an assist in the second half, and that's all it took. They never looked back from it. So they earned the first girls AAA Virginia High School League state championship for lacrosse. Robinson boys demolished the Oakton boys, and I hate to put it that way, but that's the truth. I mean, they really stuck it to them.
Which
Oakton,
is a stunner.
It is a stunner, but you have to say that maybe Oakton didn't belong there, and I say that lightly because if you earned the win, you do belong there. But what I mean by that is they beat Woodson to get there, and Woodson was a team that beat Oakton 12-2 early on in the regional tournament. So they came back and fought back from that and handed it to a team that has been a thorn in their side for years now, and that's been quite a rivalry in this area. Woodson had some players on that team that really could have taken that team far. Oakton gets the upset, advances, and takes on Matt Kugler and the Robinson Rams in that state championship final. And Matt Kugler is only a junior, and I guarantee you he will be signed before next year going to some college. The kid is incredible.
And wasn't the chatter that he would have been an All-American if it wasn't for the fact that he was a junior this year?
I believe that was some of the chatter, and some of it, Coach Fitzgerald over there said that he had maybe gotten in Kugler's face after the state semifinals, didn't like the way he had played, and put his hand on his back and gave me the whole scenario. He said, hey, go show him what you're made of.
Right.
The whole, father-son, coach-player relationship. And but yeah, I mean, he responded to that. He was asked to step up for his team, and throughout the playoffs, Kugler did that. He carried those Rams through those playoffs and scored 5 in the state championship game. three to start the game off for Robinson, 3-0. He scored in the first 7 seconds of the game, picks up a ground ball, barely doesn't even have a chance to move his stick because the rule you move your stick. He literally scooped the ground ball and converted it into a goal, and that just caught Oakton right off guard.
And the one thing I think we heard over and over again from this Robinson team in this game and after the game was it was about restoring pride to the program.
Right.
I mean, we chronicled this situation too many times in this show about the fight, about the coaching change, all this stuff. And that was such a rallying cry, I think, for this team in this postseason, was the opportunity to win the first official title, to really reestablish Robinson as the preeminent lacrosse power in the region.
Talked to Nick Cavallero about that. He's a senior who also had a couple of goals in that game, and that was the thing that he wanted to talk about. I asked him to talk about several other things, and Nick had a message, a message to get out there, and I certainly understood that, and he definitely wanted people to know that they've been through the ringer. They've heard the chants against them. They've heard all of everything. They've heard it all, and they responded, and I think they responded in a big way. And Matt Kugler definitely carried that team. This is a kid that's going to be an All-American next year, and definitely somebody to look out for in this area. I think he is the new Robbie McClay of this area. Mm-hmm. Robbie McClay, the Langley All-American. I think Matt Kugler is now taking over that role.
All right. Well, we need to ask the good folks at home an impossible freaking trivia question right now, and it has to do with the Northern Region team, I should say, in the AAA state playoffs. And I believe the question this week, my friend, is what Northern Region girls soccer team has won the most AAA state titles? Care to venture a guess, Paul?
Fairfax.
No. Well, it was a close second. The answer, not even second. The answer, of course, is West Springfield. They've won 5. Woodson has 4. Robinson 4. And now those two are joined by Lake Braddock, which won their 4th state title, also having won state titles in 2003, 1989, and 1987. So West Springfield still leader of the pack with 5, which brings us to soccer. State soccer, my friend. We went. Well, we didn't go. We can't say we won 1 for 2 because we didn't have a dog in the boys' fight. But that said, Lake Braddock girls, they get it done this year. I saw them last year against Kellum in the finals. They got pushed around. They got knocked around. It was really sort of embarrassing to watch a Braddock team that had their bread and butter was physical play. That was their reputation. And here's this team from the beach going in this game and then pushing them around. And of course, the great stuff is that they beat Kellum in the semis to get to the finals, and then they take care of Cox for their second state title in, what was it, about 2 years, I think, right? Or 3 years?
Taking care of my alma mater, actually, back from Virginia Beach, Cox High School, and from all the reports from the game was that Lake Braddock dominated. And it was good to see them, like you said, a physical team last year got beat up. It was good to see that they got back to their physical ways and did what got them 3 state titles before that, also having won one, Greg, like you mentioned, in 2003, and to get back to their winning ways. This is a school with big soccer tradition, just trailing behind West Springfield with 1 less state title, and I think with the tradition that they have there now, I think they're going to be close to tying that up pretty soon here in the Northern Region.
It was just a beatdown, 3-0. Let's be honest, they handled Cox. And this interesting stat is they've scored more than 1 goal in 14 straight games. Wow. I mean, they're playing their best. They were playing their best, and they deserve that title.
And in the semifinal, you get goals from Emily Barry and Leslie Cabe. In the final, 3-0 over Cox. Brooke Postlewaite, Kat Weiler, and Leslie Cabe get the goals. The one thing that's always impressed me about Liz Pike's teams at Braddock are the way that they're able to kind of adapt to whatever system she wants to play. She's really good at managing talent, and those teams always have a lot of diversity in their talent, folks that can play in different positions on the field. But the good news for them is that no matter who they put on defense this year, you had Stephanie Hilton back there to anchor the whole thing. And really one of the great sidebars to this whole story was the fact that Katie Frody was a goalie on the team last year, lost her job to an underclassman this year, gets the job back in the regional finals, and then basically owns the job until she's taken out late in the state finals. So this is a team that returned, I think it was 9 starters from last year's team that lost to Kellum in the finals. Really,
so they remembered it.
Oh, and that was all the motivation they needed. They felt like last year's championship was one that they didn't win. It wasn't that they lost it; it's that they didn't win. And I agree. They went into that game thinking they were going to walk all over Kellum, and they got pushed around. And I know that having read all those comments from the Kellum girls and the Kellum coach after the game about how this was going to be the dawn of the beach era in girls soccer in the state level, I mean, that really probably ticked them off. So they go and beat Kellum, and then they beat Cox, and the Northern Region reclaims its position as the top dog in girls soccer. So there you go. WT Woodson loses in the semifinals, which is a real unfortunate thing, because that would have set up a rematch with Thomas Dale in the state finals, which would have been killer. That was one of the best soccer matches I've ever seen, was last year's state final between Woodson and Dale. I think Dale was the best team clearly this year in the state, but Woodson loses to Garfield 3-0, just missing out on another trip to the state finals.
Thomas Dale is one of those schools that has just kind of built their reputation, one of those undefeated streaks that everybody talks about, and Thomas Dale is one of those schools that the reputation precedes itself, and it plays tricks on the minds of all opponents. So I think that's one of those schools that we'll definitely be hearing more about in the soccer ranks, and probably be talking about them again next year right here in these chairs.
And then Woodson loses 9 seniors from this year's team. You have to give them credit for bouncing back from a coaching change and all this other stuff to make it back to the state tournament, but that's a large number of players to lose off a team that's been very good for the last 2 years.
Liberty District is still going to be strong. They're returning a lot of players at other teams. Langley Boys definitely had a good end to the season, claiming its second Liberty District title. And so McLean, also a team that is going to be returning a lot of talent next year on the boys' side. Stephen Byro is one of those players that is going to be signed, I think, as well up through next year. So the talent in this area for soccer is second to none. On the boys' side right now, the state title doesn't reside here, but I think that the talent is still here.
Right, exactly. Now let's move over to softball for a second. Stonebridge, they come to the Northern Region. Everyone's wondering exactly what the impact's going to be having these Loudoun schools in here this year. I mean, did anyone think Stonebridge would have this sort of impact in as many sports as it did? I mean, obviously the football thing was huge. Now softball, they come in and roll through to the state tournament and come up short. But boy, I bet you got to be impressed,
Well, I talked to, when they won the region, I talked to the Oakton coach, and I said, did you guys know what you were dealing with? He goes, of course we did. But how can you prepare for a team like Stonebridge? I mean, they Brianna Harris pitching. I mean, in the semifinal game, with 2 hits she gave up.
2 hits in the semifinals for the win over Hickory.
And she almost, she pitched a great game in the finals. She scoreless 7 innings, gave up 3 in the 8th, to lose the game. But she pitches real well.
Samantha Ingersoll is a beast. This is a girl that I covered when I worked out in Loudoun as a volleyball player. And when I say she's grown 6 inches since her sophomore year, the girl is towering. She is built. She's going to the University of North Carolina to play softball. That'll tell you something about her.
Yeah.
And she's got a huge bat. She threw out a girl at third base from left field. She threw her out at third base off of another player's error. She literally backed her up, stood up with the ball, threw out at third base on a play that no one could have actually made.
Yeah.
And so that kind of saved the 1-0 victory. It was only a 1-0 victory in the semifinals to get Stonebridge to the finals. So, and I talked to the girls, Greg, after the semifinals game on what you mentioned, Stonebridge. Nobody thought, you'd be here or who they are.
Yeah.
And Brianna Harris mentioned, look, and so did Samantha Ingersoll. They said, everyone wants to compare AA to AAA. But the problem you have when doing that in softball is that AA Dulles District is most likely the best softball district in the state.
Look at Broad Run, look at Parkview.
Parkview, yeah, absolutely.
It's
well coached and all the talent.
I think the Dulles District is pound for pound better than any AAA district in the Northern Region.
And you get caught up in that, we have one more A on our A's, and it doesn't matter. Their district is so strong, and Loudoun, the hub for the Pony Nationals over the summer, which is a place where thousands of young girls flock to go and play softball. That is the hub of softball, I believe, on the East Coast, if I may say so. And I think Loudoun speaks for itself in the softball ranks, and I think they definitely made a name for themselves, not just in softball, Greg, but in all sports this year.
Indeed, all sports.
In all sports.
Yes. Got another trivia question for you, good folks at home. It's a very interesting question. I think it talks about AAA state baseball this time. So let's ask that one. Of the 35 VHSL AAA baseball state championships played since 1971, how many games have been decided by one-run margins? BJ, do you have any idea?
I have an idea, Greg, but it's also because I wrote the question. So I'm gonna allow Paul to take a stab at this one.
Let's say 9.
BJ, what's the answer?
The answer is actually 12.
Interesting.
Now,
So close.
it's an interesting stat only because the last state championship game, which was just played this Saturday, we'll get to that, was a was a one-run victory. But Northern Region teams have been involved in 6 of those one-run decisions.
Wow.
Of the 12, 6 of them have been with Northern Region teams. Oakton's 1-0 title over Patrick Henry in 2000. Madison had a 2-1 victory over J.R. Tucker in 2002. And also, recently, Westfield lost a 3-2 game to Western Branch in 2004. So we're on both ends of the one run there. And
Absolutely.
we just lose a one-run game, actually, recently.
It's a little frustrating.
And we'll get into that a bit as we progress
Well,
here.
let's talk about that. I mean, the baseball story that everyone is talking about right now, besides the fact that no one went to watch the Phillies against the Nationals this past weekend, is the fact that Oakton, in this game, in the AAA baseball tournament, may have been robbed.
Right.
Why don't you set the scene?
All right, I'm sitting in the press box at Christopher Newport University where this young gentleman went and got his wonderful college education.
Great school.
But, it's an intense game,
Yeah.
okay? Oakton got to this state championship game after a terrible start to the season. They rallied, went on about a 10 or 11 game winning streak, beat Madison. They beat Madison in the regional tournament,
Yeah.
a team that was supposed to win the state title hands down this year. Then further progressed, okay? They kept going, they kept fighting, they kept eking out wins. And this is a team that, remember, Greg, they shouldn't have even been there.
No.
They shouldn't have even been in the district tournament or in the regional tournament. I mean, they just scooted by. They kept winning tough games because they had the tradition. And the tradition carried them. Well, state final, you've worked that hard. You've beat the odds. You've carried on the tradition of your school without Curtis Eward, who's going to George Washington next year, slugger, incredible player. You've lost players throughout the year to injury, suspensions. You fought the odds. And here you are on the last game of the season, and you're fighting back again.
Yeah.
Here you are. It's a microcosm of your season. They fought back through the whole game. They were down 9-4 in the 5th. They fought back, 1 run here, 2 runs there. 9-6 in the 7th inning. They fight back to 9-8.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you the play-by-play. Okay, they've got a runner on first, they've got a runner on third, and Kevin Wager's up to bat. He's the pitcher that got them past First Colonial in the semifinals game. Hits a little shot to shortstop. It's scooped, thrown to second base. Second baseman turns. Wager was on first base, slides in at second base. Colin Michael, hit the little shot to shortstop, ekes it out, fielder's choice, gets on base, the throw is wide.
Yes.
Okay? But they said Wager slid wide at second base. They had one out. The tying run came across the plate, so it should be 9-9. Both teams are celebrating right now because Monacan gets the news that it was an obstruction at second base. They get the double play. Michael doesn't get the fielder's choice single, and game's over, 9-8.
All right, so let's talk about that. On the phone with us now is the coach of the Oakton Cougars baseball team, Scott Rowland. Scott, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Fantastic. It's Greg, BJ, and Paul, and we were just going through the play-by-play of the robbery in the state tournament. How are you feeling? I mean, days now removed from this situation, from this controversial play. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm more disappointed for my team because they did battle back. We just missed tying the game up in the inning before. Despins hit a ball about 2 feet. Well, it was off the wall, actually. Missed a home run by about 2 feet that would have tied the game. So then we came back in the 7th with the bottom half of our order up, and they really battled to put us in a position to win. And, like you said, we were celebrating because we thought we tied the game until about 3 to 4 seconds later when we see Monacan the Monacan guys in a big pile up.
Yeah.
Scott, you were visibly upset after the game, as a lot of parents and players were. Talk a little bit about the emotions after that game, and what were some of the questions you had to ask the umpires as they scooted for the back door there.
Well, actually, it was only one umpire, so I felt like in that type of game, we deserved an explanation, and instead, I look up looking for him, and he's already in left field, leaving the stadium. So, of course, I made a beeline to cut him off, so I could at least find out what happened, because we were in shock. We really weren't sure what the call was until I got down there. Then he told me what the call was, and I guess my basic response was, you're going to end a championship baseball game, the state championship baseball game where both teams battled. You're going to end it on that call right there. And of course, he had a little to give back to me, but it wasn't the answer I wanted to hear.
Right. And Scott, having talked to Kevin after the game, and to you, and to also Corey Minor, who was the second baseman for Monacan, there was some conflicting reports. What was your view of the play, and what did you see?
Quite honestly, I think the only people that saw it was Wager, because even asking my coaches, they said it looked okay. I didn't get a great look at it. I was just going basically by what Kevin Wager said, and I talked to him again yesterday just to make sure, because I told him, whatever happened, happened, but you're the only one that knows. We're supposed to get a tape later on this week to kind of, I don't know, to quench our thirst for it, to, hey, what really happened?
In base, obviously in football, everybody always talks about, let the players play the game. You don't want to end the game on a call, that sort of thing. Is the same sort of thing hold true for baseball? Do you not want to see the umpires decide a game like that?
Well, I'm the type of coach, I want umpires to call balls and strikes and safe and out. All the other stuff, to me, has to be very obvious. And, I've seen games decided this year on balk calls or runs scored on balk calls where I really didn't think anyone was being deceived. So, we're not the first team it's happened to, but I would like to see the game, all sports, decided by the players, and not end on a controversial call like this.
Scott, I got a chance to talk to Oakton DSA Phil Levine, and he did mention that he has, and in fact, I've got a copy of an email he sent down to the Virginia High School League and the people that are running the tournament, just trying to get an explanation of the call from the umpire or umpires association. Have you guys received any further explanation from them after the fact?
No, and I know the rule. You're not allowed to go out of the baseline to draw contact. It used to be that you could take out a second baseman or you could take out a shortstop. If you were close to the bag, you could take out that middle infielder. And now there is a rule that says you have to slide directly into the base. You can't slide past it. You can't go to the left or right of the base to draw contact. But if you draw contact going straight to the base, you should be okay.
I know, the tape, obviously you get to see maybe what happened in the situation, but at the end of the day, as a coach, do you sort of just look at this and say, all right, the call was the call, right or wrong, but the bottom line is that we got down big, we had to battle back, that's a lot of energy we're expending. In other words, is the game lost before that play for you at all?
I talked to my guys yesterday again, and we talked about it directly after the game. We had opportunities early to put ourselves in a position where it didn't come down to the last call. However, we put ourselves in that position to be down, but we gave a great effort to battle back and put ourselves in a position to win the game as well. So, there's two sides to it. I don't want to blame the game on an umpire. I don't want to say we lost the game because of an umpire's call. We had chances. Our players had chances. Our coaches had chances. So I'll never blame the game on the umpire. I just would have liked to seen the game go on, and if we lose, we lose. But or if the kid turns a double play, we lose. We don't even have anything to question. But there is a question in my mind and a player's mind what really happened and why you would make a call like that. But in no way will we blame the umpire for us losing the game.
And Scott, it has to kind of sour, the experience this year. I mean, you guys, and I was talking about it before we got you on the phone there, you guys battled. I mean, you guys started off a difficult season. You come back, you win 10 or 11 straight games. You only faltered when you could afford to falter. You faltered in the district tournament, but still advanced. And you faltered in the regional tournament, but still advanced. And always seemed like you guys just had just enough to get by. And here you are on the biggest stage of the state. You feel like you're doing what you've done all season, and then suddenly it's over. Was it too soon to be over? Was it too shocking?
No, I thought we gave it a good run. I thought we put ourselves in a position to win the game, regardless of the umpire's call. We got there, we took the season as far as we could take it. Do I wish we'd have come out on top? Sure. And I've always said for years that, God, I'd hate to be there collecting that runner-up trophy for the region. I'd hate to be there collecting that runner-up trophy for the state tournament. I'd almost rather win any type of championship than being a runner-up in the region and state. However, now that we've been through it, I don't know if I would take a district championship over what we had this year.
Right. I guess finally, Scott, talk a little bit about the resiliency of these Oakton athletes. It's been, looking back on it, you can kind of take a step back and look back at it now, an amazing year on the male side of the docket for Oakton athletes. All across the board, every season. This season for you, looking at this team, how does it compare to successful teams you've had in the past, and what does it say about the quality of athletes at Oakton?
Well, we've put ourselves in a position to get to the state tournament 6 out of the 7 years that I've been coaching at Oakton. We've made it 3 times, and we lost the regional playoff game to get to the state tournament. So we've put ourselves in position to be there. Every coach wants to win it every time, but in baseball, unlike other sports, there's a lot of matchup things that have to happen for you. There's a lot of luck involved. There's been luck involved when we've been there, and there's been a little bad luck when we haven't been there. So we've given ourselves a chance, and I'm proud of that our guys that play at Oakton, they expect to compete for a state championship every year.
And Scott, while we still have you here, I just want to mention a couple guys on the team and get to one guy in particular, but Alfredo Rodriguez at shortstop, a young kid coming back for you. You had Colin Michael this year closing out games, and Benji Kagan on the mound. Chris Despin's a big bomber for you on his way to Longwood now. Connor Madden shoring up the infield after a couple of suspensions there, and Keith Werman behind the plate. You guys were just, you seemed like everybody kind of made a name for themselves this year, but there was one guy that wasn't on the field that when he did get his chance in the state championship game, Curtis Eward, you put him in there in a big situation. He's been injured all year. Tell us a little bit about the progression of Curtis, what happened to him early on, and how he ended up in that state championship game.
We had dislocated his shoulder the second week of the season, and I guess by the third week we had figured out that he was going to be out for the season. He had season-ending surgery. The last couple of weeks he's been shagging fly balls in the outfield and hitting some balls off the tee. So I got a call down in Newport News from our trainer that he got word that the doctor said that Curtis would be okay just to swing. Couldn't play a position, couldn't run, but we could use him as a DH or a pinch hitter. So knowing Curtis the way I do, he's been on my team for 3 years. He didn't miss any practices the whole time he was out with the injury. Even though we didn't get the outcome we wanted, it was quite a moment if you were there.
That's right.
When he was swinging that bat coming up with the bases loaded, he got a standing ovation from our crowd because they know the hard work that he's put in to put himself in that position. Like I said, even though we didn't get the result, Curtis had a nice quote yesterday. He said, "Coach, I know he was only throwing 80, but for some reason it looked like he was throwing about 92 when I got up there."
Curtis is a guy that's headed to GW and definitely carried the team last year, and is a big guy, and I know that he's meant a lot to the program, so it was good to see him up there, and it was definitely a heartwarming to see him get a chance to play in the state championship game after having to sit out. And like you said, he was with you guys throughout the whole year. Kind of took on a coaching leadership role and really got the guys in shape there. So it was good to see that. But hey, Coach, we appreciate you coming on, and thanks for all your insight. And we appreciate you answering all the tough questions here tonight.
No problem. I would like to mention one player that you did forget was Brandon Padula.
Sure.
Brandon had 8 home runs for us, hit over 400, and he was one of that core group that you guys were mentioning, but he was right in the thick of things for us.
Absolutely, Coach, and I got to throw Carmine Cafiero in there, too. He hit one out in the state championship game, so I'll try to get them all in there when I can.
I appreciate it. We had good production from the whole team.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach. Forgot our roster, man. We could just tick them down from the backup catcher to the starting shortstop.
I got it all right here.
Well, I hope Oakton lets us know when they go Zapruder film on this thing, whether what exactly happened on the.
Well, really, what they're doing is, and through talking to a couple people today, is nobody actually has it except for one media outlet from Newport News.
Yeah.
And what they were, I remember the guy was actually on the Oakton dugout, right next to the Oakton dugout, and had a clear vision. And there was an Oakton parent there with a camera, but I think that Oakton parent did what everybody else did, which was look to first base for the throw.
For the throw, right.
And I think
or
that
look at the guy
kind
across
of,
the plate. Yeah.
But I think that speaks volumes to the minuteness of the play at second. I believe if it was something outstanding, and I know having spoken to this parent who was doing the video, knows a thing or two about baseball. So would have kept the camera there if it was something that needed to be looked at again, and I think that that right there will tell you a little bit about that play. I'll say myself, personal opinion, and I don't get to write these in the paper, but this is a good venue to do that. Personal opinion, I saw the play, I saw the result. I would have liked to have seen them play the game from 9-9 and just see what happened from that point. It's tied up, nobody's lost anything. You still got 2 outs. Let them play the game.
Yeah, but the bottom line, and we talked about this ad nauseum in the office today. The bottom line is that there's still a team that gave up 9 runs and had to battle back from that. And to me, it's a subjective play. You never like to see a game end like that. I agree with Roland that you'd rather see an umpire call the outs and the balls and the strikes
Right.
and kind of inject himself into the game like that. But really, is it any different than a subjective play at the plate to end the game? I mean, it's still a guy looking at a situation, making a decision, right or wrong. That's the guy who's paid to be there and make that decision.
And you got to look at the other way with the other team. So say the slide was wide and it caused a wide throw. Don't you want the umps beyond that?
Right.
If you got to look at it both sides. Obviously, we'd like them to finish out the game. Obviously, tie game. But what if?
I think the deal is that when you talk about the interference call, it's such a physical play. It's such an aggressive play to try to change the course of a guy's throw, that kind of thing. I think coaches and fans want to see a little leeway given to that. It's kind of like when you're in a hockey game and you give a guy a shot behind the play late in the game. You're hoping the referee's not going to penalize you for it because it's just that point in the game where you start to play more aggressively, where you play a bit more physically, where you let those things go because the emotions and the adrenaline are so high at that point.
And to speak to what Paul said, I mean, Coach Ben Bradford from the Monacan side, of course, had a different opinion. I mean, and I want to read a quote to him, and I think I'll read a quote to the audience. I think this kind of speaks a little bit about what really happened there. Coach Ben Bradford said, "If I was in Roland's shoes, I would be saying the same thing. You don't want to win it that way. But it is a rule. The umpire made the correct call." I think I partially agree with that. And part of me says, 40% of me says, okay, 40% of me says, maybe the slide was wide. Okay?
Yeah.
Maybe it was.
Yeah.
150% of me says, if the kid isn't bleeding or on the ground totally laid out, let them figure it out.
Let them play the game.
Let them play it. Let them figure it out. And that's where I think it might have been the right call. I think it was the wrong time for that call.
And speaking of letting them play, our friends in the Northern Region Council decided to let nearly every football team in the region play as long as they want to.
Oh, goodness.
In case you have not heard, the vote came down, and the Northern Region football playoffs for Division 5 and Division 6 have been expanded. There will now be 8 Division 6 teams and 8 Division 5 teams to make the postseason. And I think we have sort of a graphical representation of what would have happened last year had it happened. As you see, you would have had Oakton, Westfield, Robinson, Annandale. Those were the playoff teams last year. Centerville would have made it, as many of their fans believe they should have anyway. But then you would have had Herndon, you would have had Lee, and you would have had Lake Braddock. In Division 5, it gets a little bit more absurd. You would have had Stonebridge, Loudoun Valley, Edison, Madison. That's great. Yorktown, hey, that's good. They're a solid team. 5-5 Jefferson, 6-4 Falls Church, 5-5 Marshall, who could only win 5 games in the Liberty District, would have been a playoff team under this format. Now, let me say my piece first.
Well, before we get into the argumentative part, let me just give a little history on this and how this came about.
Okay.
I was at the Northern Region Council meeting when it passed. And what they did was the DSAs, particularly Westfield, Francis Dahl, and Principal Mike Campbell over there, wrote up some legislation. It's been sitting around since March, even before that, I believe, and it's been bantered back and forth. And the DSAs voted 15 to 11. The Northern Region Council voted 15 to 11 to approve that. The DSAs voted 15 to 11. The Northern Region Council, it's hard to keep all this bureaucracy in your mind, voted unanimously to pass this. And what it'll do is it'll, by PowerPoints, decide what top 8 teams in each division, being that there's 2 divisions, will move on into the playoffs. I believe there's around 35 Northern Region public high schools, so 16 is somewhere near half. And I think basically the reasoning for it that they gave is that it keeps the regular season more interesting towards the end of the season, where some teams usually think they're out of it. They're stopped playing maybe. It's going to bring more money, obviously. That's always a good indicator for the Northern Region, is always going to vote to bring in more money. But I think for us idealists, I think it's good. It's more games, and it gives more teams to play more games. Now, you wanted to argue a little bit, sir, so I'll toss you the mic.
All right, let me make 3 extraordinarily cogent points. The first being is that the great thing about the Northern Region football playoffs and the football playoffs in general in the state is that they're not watered down. You're playing for something during the entire regular season. When you get to the playoffs, you're playing for a chance to go to the state championship game. You're playing for something real. And the great thing about it is that it is not an all-access pass. There is a velvet rope. You have to be of a certain quality to get into the club. And now we are allowing 5-5 teams to play in the postseason, and that is an absolute joke. The other point I'd make is about the regular season. Now when you go to that Westfield-Robinson game to go see that big old smackdown in the regular season, you know what you're seeing? You're not seeing a game that's going to mean anything towards whether those teams make or do not make the playoffs. They're going to make it based on the fact that they're going to have enough PowerPoints. Those games have been knocked down of several notches to just being about home field advantage in the playoffs. And the last thing I'd say is that we know it's all about money, because this decision, just like every other football decision, is always about money. And they can say it's about the participation, but let's say it is about the participation. Let's say it's about giving all the Johnnies out there a chance to play as much postseason football as they can. Where is the call to make the state tournament a 32-team tournament? I haven't heard it, because no one wants to see it, because they know then it becomes an absolute joke of a tournament when you have 6-4 teams advancing to play for the state tournament. It is, from a competition standpoint, it is such a bad decision. It waters it down, and it does give some teams a chance to play. But the first time you see a star running back go down in a 1-8 game, you're going to see a backlash against this thing.
All right, and you make several good points.
I know, we're all really good points.
Several points that I also agree with, and I think injuries are going to be a big thing, and coaches are going to definitely speak out against that when their star player goes down, and you're going to hear some gripes against this thing. Let's note that this won't go into effect until 2007 as well. So next season will be Greg's favorite season and his little swan song and whatnot. But think about it this way, okay? The Northern Region is such a talent-rich football area that if maybe we were talking about, I don't know, the Northwest region or AA, Harrisonburg, maybe I have more of an issue of it. But there's so many kids in this area that deserve to still get a chance to to play in the playoffs that don't. Because, for example, and you saw on that graphic for Division 6, I don't know if we get a chance to maybe throw the Division 6 graphic back up there if possible, but Herndon is a team. Let's look at Herndon. 6-4, a 23.5 PowerPoint ranking at the end of the season. This is a team that Tommy Meyer has coached for 16 years. They've made the playoffs between 5 and 6 times. Tommy, I talked to him yesterday. He estimated that Herndon would have made the playoffs 12 times in his 16 years. Now, this is not 5-5 Herndon teams. This is not 3-7 Herndon teams. These are Herndon teams that go 7-3, 6-4. They never get a chance to beat the big meat grinder teams, which I understand you're going to make that point. Win the big games if you want to. But they are caught in that little cycle where you can't break the big one because you've got the big dogs in your district. Now, when you get a chance to sniff the playoffs, maybe more talent starts coming to your school. Maybe the kids that are supposed to be going to your school start going to your school because you're going to the playoffs. You're getting on that stage.
Yeah, along with
so
7
the
other
cycle,
teams.
The cycle continues for other teams. Oakton, right there, you see them, 8-2, 28.7 PowerPoints, went on for a 12-2 record to win the state title. I'm going to be honest with you now. Oakton is not going to have that kind of year next year. They've lost everything. So they go back into that cycle where maybe they're a Herndon. Herndon's returning so many players. I talked to quarterback Zay Lopez today. This is a kid that's going to throw all over the Northern Region next year. Watch out. They've got a running back coming. I mean, these are teams now that Herndon's going to get a chance to maybe jump up the ranks now and take advantage of this thing. And the Oaktons of the world are going to be happy just to get into the playoffs. What
do you say,
So
Paul?
it's a cycle. It's a cycle.
What do you say,
Well, you
Paul?
see, with Herndon, you're saying they're 6-4, and they're 6-4 because they couldn't beat the big teams. That means they cannot beat the big teams in the playoffs. They shouldn't have the chance. They can't beat them in the regular season. Why give them a second chance in the postseason? And the second point, which I got to argue with Greg on this one, is saying, you got the Westfield Robinson game that means nothing. Talk to the players.
Right.
It means everything. If you're in Westfield, you want to beat Centerville, you want to beat Robinson. You're playing your hardest. Maybe from a viewer's aspect, it might water down the game. You might think, oh, they're playing hard. Trust me, as a Northern Region football player, they're playing hard.
Of course they're playing hard. They only get 10 chances to do it. Well, they used to, at least, before everybody started making the playoffs. But my point is that those games, especially in the Concord district, especially after the redistricting, those games meant life or death. You knew when Westfield, Oakton, Centerville, Robinson played each other, life or death. 2 of those teams, in theory, depending on what's happening over in the Patriot District, aren't making the playoffs. Now, the 4 best teams in the Concord District are going to make the playoffs more times than not.
And they
So
should,
But
because
why-
they're
wh-
playing against state championship contenders every single week. Centerville is a team, which is a classic example. 25.7 point power ranking last year, 8-2 record, lost 2 heartbreaking games, one on an Evan Royster interception in the end zone from Dudzik to Dose, which totally cost them their postseason chances. And this is a team that just because they played in the Concord District couldn't play in the tournament. They could have gone on with their no-huddle offense and one of the best quarterbacks I've seen at the high school level to win the state championship, but they got shut out of the playoffs because they were stuck in a meat grinder district.
Because they couldn't beat the teams they're supposed to beat to get to the playoffs.
Hey,
here's the bottom line.
A play here or there. You give them
Once
another chance against the Westfield in the playoffs, and they may come back and beat them down to the ground.
But they didn't beat them when it counted. Here's the bottom line.
But
just
the
like,
playoffs
just like
now
half
is
the
where it
decisions-
comes alive.
Half the
It's where it
decisions
comes
when-
alive. It
Hold on.
takes your regular season and it makes the playoffs more interesting.
You're just like the Northern Region Council. You think it's the Concord region. When you make a decision like this, it affects all of the districts. So now, just to make sure that Herndon can get into the playoffs because they can't win a big game, we have to make sure that Falls Church gets in and Marshall gets in. Teams that have absolutely no business being in the postseason unless they buy a ticket are going to be in the playoffs now because we have to make sure that Herndon and Centerville are happy. That's what it is. That's what it's about.
You got to look at team. I mean, the big thing that really bothered me was Centerville didn't make it because only 2 teams or 3 teams from, if Centerville should have been in the playoffs last year. Herndon, probably not. But this helps teams like Centerville get in, and for that reason, it's a good thing. Now letting Centerville in also means letting Herndon in. I'll take it because Centerville should have been in the playoffs.
But what about 5-5 teams? Should they be in?
5-5 teams. I mean, teams like Marshall, they're not. Let them play another game. They're not going to make a difference. They're really not going to make a difference.
But why should they even have the honor of being in the postseason if they can't even be 6-4?
Well, they shouldn't. But I'm taking. It's like this right here. Centerville going in is more important than Falls Church not going in. And it's not because
the needs of the many
when
outweigh the needs
when
of
I
the
was in high school, I had no love for Centerville. but they should have been in last year.
And I think that it takes your argument about the regular season watered down, and it makes the playoffs interesting. Marshall's a team that really gelled towards the end of last season. They almost beat Madison, okay? In the last game of the regular season, the rivalry game, they lost on a halfback pass, which went for 70 yards or somewhere in that nature. So Marshall's a team that could have been 6-4. Wasn't. I'll give you that. I understand what you're saying. But they lost to a Madison team that went on to the playoffs, okay, with a 23.4 power ranking, and lost to Stonebridge, which was the #1 seed that went to the state finals. So, pick and choose your teams there. I mean, records don't tell everything. And I think that, you have some teams making the playoffs. I think it makes the playoffs more interesting where somebody can jump up and bite somebody else.
We'll agree to disagree. All right. I want to thank everybody for watching the show. I want to remind everybody, that you can head to www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com for more fun and hilarity and lots of wonderful pictures of us on the stage, courtesy of Carrie Black. CCI Screen Printing, thank you for your underwriting, 703-978-0257. And thank you, Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And Father's Day, hey, Glow Pucks and 10-cent beer, you know what I'm saying? 101 Worst Ideas in Sports History by me. There you go. Thanks for watching, everybody. It's been a spirited debate, as always. I told you we should have done the football early in the show. We could have done 3 hours in the football.
Hey, like my boy Sammy said, just keep them wanting more, man. Keep them swinging.
Keep them swinging.
Leave them swinging.
That's what he could speak. He decided to speak, right?
Oh, goodness.
That's right. All right.
Well, hey, good debate, man.
Well, it's always
You
a
too,
good
buddy.
debate. I mean, it's we're very passionate about sports. I'm a bit more of a purist than you, but so be it.
I'm just upset we didn't get to the World Cup. I think that's what everybody was waiting for. Oh,
Indeed.
man. Hey, congratulations to all you graduates out there.
That's right.